Fortnite is a game that's dominated by keyboard and mouse players, and well, I've been a controller player since I can remember, but for the next 7 days that will all change, as I'm going to be trying keyboard and mouse for 1 whole week to see how good I can really get. So going into day 1, I knew I had to set some goals that I can work towards during this challenge. I decided on trying to hit these 3 goals: hit a successful quad edit, try and learn at least 3 retake moves, and lastly try and get a win. So with that in mind, I started out on day 1 by finding the perfect settings that I'll use for the next 7 days. This was quite hard at first as I wasn't used to any of the binds at all, but after about 20 minutes of research and testing, I managed to find the settings that felt pretty good to me and were as optimal as I could get them. After this, I wanted to try and get muscle memory of all the builds, so I just practiced placing down all the builds and learning the motions of how to do it. I did this for a couple of minutes before trying to do my first 90. I started off slow and eventually picked up the pace, and after just a couple of attempts I managed to do it. I was then feeling more confident in my builds and attempted to learn double edits. And again, I started off slow and gradually increased the speed until I managed to do them somewhat consistently, and I even managed to do a triple edit after some more practice. Lastly, I learned some tunneling before heading into Raiders edit practice map, where I'll be practicing my editing. The first drill I tried was double edits, and I was already very consistent with them. However, I did mess up every now and then, so I hadn't quite mastered it just yet. I then continued with all the other editing drills in this section, and for the most part, I was pretty consistent. I could already tell that editing on keyboard and mouse would be a lot easier to learn than editing on controller. I then did a little bit of editing and shooting before then moving on to this edit course section. I was quite slow at the beginning and was messing up a lot, but I still managed to complete all the different drills in this section of the map. I then finished off with some edit downs, which again, I wasn't very good at. After this, I hopped into Raiders piece control map and did most of the drills. I began by doing them slowly and eventually managed to do them at full speed. I spent quite a long time in this map just so I can improve my piece control as much as I could, because I know it's one of the most important aspects of Fortnite. After practicing piece control, I decided to test out my skills in box fights, and even though my opponents weren't far off my skill level, I was quite surprised at how well I was doing. I even managed to get the first guy I fought to quit after just 1 round. I then faced another player who won the first few rounds, but after a little bit of playing against him, I managed to win a few rounds as well. Overall, day 1 was pretty successful as I learned the basics and managed to hold my own against other players, and so I was pretty confident going into day 2. So going into day 2, I began the same way that I started day 1 by doing some free building, but this time I did it in slow motion, and this helped a lot in getting better crosshair placement. I then played Raiders piece control practice map just so that I can carry on improving my piece control before then hopping into my first ever game on keyboard and mouse. And it started well. I got a gun off spawn and killed this guy with questionable aim. And to be honest, I don't know why he was AFK, but it ended up being my first kill on keyboard and mouse. I then found another player, and after a very drawn out fight and a lot of low damage shots, I went down. And that was all I did for day 2. Now on to day 3, I started off with some free building, and now that I was fully used to my binds, I've noticed a lot of improvement. On top of this, I learnt my first retake, which was a side jump move that I do a lot on controller, and I also learnt this retake, so that is 2 out of 3 retakes done. On top of this, after a few attempts, I managed to hit my first ever successful quad edit, which means that I can now tick it off my goals. I then went into the headshot only practice map to practice my aim, and despite dying a lot of times, I actually hit some nice shots, and I could instantly notice that my aim was improving. And here are a few kills that I got while playing the map. After this, I wanted to improve at fighting, so I played some speed realistics to end off the day, and this is how that went. So that is all I did in day 3, and on day 4 I started again with some free building, and I felt like I made a lot more progress with my building and even managed to learn the 3rd and final retake, meaning that I've now completed another one of my goals. After a lot of free building, I worked through all the courses, including the peak training and also the 8v1 against bot section in Raiders practice map. After this, I then went and played some box fights to end off the day, and this is how it went. So on day 5 I started again with some free building, then I did some 1v1s against one of my subscribers for the rest of the day, and this is how that went. So that is all I did for day number 5, but on day 6 I started off again by free building to warm up, and then I headed into speed realistics to practice my fighting. I then played some of the headshot only map before playing some box PvP, and then that was all I did for day number 6. So it was now the final day of the 7-day progression, and I begun by free building as usual. I then revisited Raiders edit practice map for a little while, and I could definitely see some improvements compared to the first time I did it. I then went into Raiders practice map for quite a while, and then I played some speed realistics, which was the last thing I did before I tried to complete my last goal, which was to win a game. But I knew that all the practice over the past week would all come down to this. So I decided to land Slappy Shores, and I got looted up before getting my first kill of the game. I then went on to get the second kill of the game after I snuck up on this guy. Then after clearing out Slappy, I got into a fight mid game, but I easily won the fight. And my confidence was high. The player count slowly decreased until it was the final 1v1.